our COBT viewers and listeners, it's Maynard, Mike, and Jeff with something exceptional today. Håkan Agnevall is with us. He's the president and CEO of Wärtsilä. We usually have been walking around saying Wärtsilä, but we're working on our Finnish pronunciation. Håkan has been CEO since 2021. You've seen us talk about Wärtsilä previously on COBT, but it is a Finnish company. It's over 190 years old. It is an energy solutions company. It's best known, I think, for its marine applications, exceedingly large and powerful marine engines. But over time, it's just increasingly become an energy technology and solutions company. We are so happy to have you, Håkan. We also know you're traveling, seeing customers, doing lots of things. So we really appreciate you taking time out of your day to visit with us here on Veterans Day in the US. So thank you again.
Yes, and thank you for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to join. And you know, today I'm joining from Little Rock in Arkansas, and this is where SPP has its headquarters. So we are meeting with SPP people today, and we are really excited in Wärtsilä. As you said, we are serving both marine and energy. Marine is about 60% of our business, but energy is about 40% of our business. And in our energy business, we provide balancing power for renewables, or balancing power to keep the system stable and having the uptime reliability. And we provide the baseload power, and the hottest new baseload application is, of course, data center. So there is a lot of exciting things going on for us, and in the US, and not at least, you could say, in the midsection of the US, with its big wind corridors and also solar coming online.
Well, we're super excited to talk to you. I think, Håkan, as we were getting ready to visit with you, we have a long list of topics, and we know we won't be able to get to all of them, but your perspective on the world, on energy, on power, on so many things is going to be great. Mike, before we jump in further with Håkan, what would you tell us? I think you're over at the EEI conference, but what would you tell us about what's going on in the markets?
Well, Maynard, I just got back from EEI. It was a great conference, and we'll talk about that in 2 seconds. But just to give you an idea what's going on in the markets right now, Dow's up about 500 points today. I think a lot of that just is government reopening trade, and by default, a risk-on trade. So for this week, it's a lead-in. We're going to really kind of call this event week, right? Because there's a lot of events that went on this week, including some current and some historical events. And so, the first one we wanted to highlight, obviously, was the U.S. government reopening, which it looks like it's going to be here in the next couple of days or before the end of this week. And the market was up today, obviously, like we noted, because that uncertainty has been reduced. Now, the one thing we'd say is that going forward, economic reports, are going to be getting released. They haven't been released up to this point in time. And so economic reports are going to be really important. And it's going to be really important to decide, for the Fed to see, labor reports, inflation reports, because they're going to have a December FOMC meeting, and whether they're going to be raising, lowering rates again. It's going to be really important. So expect some more volatility, especially in a 10-year bond yield. It's been stuck at 4% for the 41 days of this government shutdown. The next event we want to really kind of talk about is COP30. It's currently being held in Brazil. And including others, frankly, was unaware that COP30 was occurring this week. And we're thinking that the U.S., China, India didn't realize it was occurring either, because they didn't really send any high-level diplomats to it. And if they did send diplomats, it was very, very low-level diplomats. And I'd say the main thing surprised me. The main theme is getting back on track with Paris levels, which seems really, really odd to me and out of sync with where climate narratives has shifted over the last couple of years. So I guess we'll see how that kind of develops here. Now, the next event we wanted to highlight is Chevron's Investor Day. That's being hosted tomorrow. We expect to hear a lot about, how they're the best position they've ever been, and what, how they're going to basically deal with the current commodity prices, and maybe what they're going to do over the next 3 to 5 years, how they see that things playing out on a macro, standpoint. Free cash flow, return of capital, those are all going to be key themes. And maybe electricity might be a key theme as well. Another thing, one obviously you talked about earlier was the electric, EEI, Edison Electric conference. We just got back from it. It was in Hollywood, Florida. We actually prefer that to the other Hollywood, but it was a really, really good conference. I mean, loads of analysts, bankers, investors, rating agencies. And so, the two themes that came out of this conference shouldn't be surprising. It was affordability and speed to market. And so we're really, really looking forward to talking about to Wärtsilä about this speed to market issue. The last thing we want to say is basically because of we're hosting Wärtsilä today, and their marine background, but we wanted to basically give a shout out or maybe commemorate this 50-year anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Obviously in Lake Superior, and the loss of all 29 crew members. We just wanted to mention this because it was a big event in U.S. maritime history, and so we just wanted to pay really homage and respect to those 29 crew members that didn't survive. The last thing we wanted to basically talk about is Wärtsilä. Obviously, stock's up 60% this year, set a 5-year high. And I think, the reason we want to host them today, and some of the things that we hope that our viewers get, come to see and come to hear today is this speed to market issue is a big, big issue. They have products that can basically, deliver on that speed to market. And so we're really looking forward to, talking to Wärtsilä and CEO. And so we'll hand it back to you, Maynard.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike. Jeff, anything you'd throw in as we jump in?
I think let's jump in with Håkan. That's good.
Okay, let's jump in. Well, Håkan, thanks again for joining. I was thinking as we were just doing the intro there is one of the areas, there's so many things we could talk about, but one of the areas that our viewers have been fascinated by over the years has been shipping, because shipping is such a huge part of commerce. It's sort of a cousin of energy. There's issues there and technology and regulatory things. And then it's, I think, notable in our world, the Trump administration leaned in recently and pushed back on the changes that had been proposed around fuels for shipping. But just the company's history and knowledge of shipping is stunning, and we don't get to talk about it enough. Would you mind if we started with that classic part of the business before we move into the rest?
Absolutely. Let's start with marine.
Let's do it. I know your technology is wildly advanced. We keep hearing we need to come to Vasa to see everything you have going from a technology standpoint. But would you mind just talking a little bit about the trends you're noticing in your shipping business?
Yeah, certainly. So, let's talk about the long-term trends, and we can also talk some of the more short-term trends. So long-term, it is, we have an International Maritime Organization. It's a UN organization. It's an organization that actually regulates the whole marine industry. And it's pretty unique because it covers the whole globe, so to say. I mean, normally we have regulatory institutions per country, but this is truly global, which of course makes it slow moving, and there are twists and turns in introducing new regulations. However, a couple of years back, IMO set a clear target to have the whole industry converging to net zero by or around 2050. And there was some new regulations kicking in already in 2023, carbon intensity indexes, there are a couple of other metrics. So you could say the decarb journey in marine shipping has started. Marine shipping accounts for somewhere 2 to 3% of the global carbon emission, and the journey has started. And I think when a ship owner consider buying or building a new vessel, they know that the lifetime of the vessel will be around 30 years. So they need to, take strategic decisions about what's going to happen during those 30 years. And of course, nobody has the perfect crystal ball, but I think, and this is the dialogue that we have with a lot of our customers, what is my journey on this regulatory that is already in place from IMO, and and that would depend where you're operating in the world, and also what type of application you're operating, so to say. Now, with all that, there's still kind of two elements that holds true, and that is the value of fuel flexibility, so you can use or convert the driveline, the engines to different type of fuels, because there won't be, that's our view, there won't be a single silver bullet fuel. I mean, green is not black or white. No single simple solution. So there are going to be multiple fuels, and they're going to be the carbon fuels, they're going to be the carbon neutral fuels, they're going to be the zero carbon fuels. And what you need to deal with that landscape over a 30-year period is fuel flexibility. The other element that is really important is fuel efficiency. And that goes straight to your bottom line, your economics. And that will become even, because the fuel will become gradually more expensive. Now, the fossil fuel will become more expensive because there will be gradually more and more levies put on, carbon pricing mechanisms, whatever we call them. And then the green fuel, current estimates, they will be 2 to 4 times more costly than the current fossil fuel. So we will have an evolving ecosystem over the years to come where fuel prices are going up. And of course, then fuel efficiency becomes in focus, so to say. So if we look at Wärtsilä, we are about innovation and technology and services. And what we are doing, we are really developing these, engines and driveline propulsion systems that gives our customers the flexibility and the efficiency to deal with the future. So I think this is the kind of overall long-term approach. Then short-term, yes, there has been the MEPC 83, which is an environmental committee of IMO, and they were up for a vote on a global carbon pricing mechanism. That decision has been postponed, based on a strong advocacy from the US. And let's see what happens. It's been postponed for a year, and let's see what happens in a year's time. We don't know. Now, what will happen, or what is likely to happen, and because of the postponement, there is a little bit of a limbo, and I think the challenge for the marine industry, that it's likely that we will have a kind of patchwork of different regulations in different parts of the world. EU has its regulatory framework, and it's likely that China will introduce their own regulatory framework, and there may be other countries or region introducing frameworks. And if you're a ship owner, you need to deal with all those frameworks. So it's going to be more complex going forward, so to say. But coming back, the kind of this underlying 30-year time perspective, the need for fuel flexibility, the need for fuel efficiency, that is still staying. And that's why, as Wärtsilä, we are still optimistic about, what it means for our company and how we can support our customers. And on top of that, we have certain core segments, type of vessels where we are strong: cruise, ferries, some offshore vessels, etc. And those core segments, they actually have a pretty nice growth trajectory the coming years.
Would you mind sharing just technologically how, take any of your products, but just how flexible can an engine be around fuels? Like, give us the most breadth example.
No, so you're in this situation. Today with most engines, you can handle at least 2 fuels, and you will be looking at, can you convert maybe to 3 fuels even. So these are the type of flexibility. But it's not only about the engines, also the tank systems, because these different fuels, they have different energy density. So you might, if you go for certain fuels, you need bigger tanks. You need to be prepared for that, and that affects the architecture of the whole vessels. So yes, it starts with the engines, but it's also the whole vessel architecture.
So you made this great point about, the engine can have a certain flexibility, the fuel tankage that requires, its own flexibility. So if you were, just so since we're on this topic, if you were those 3 flavors that you might blend into an engine and have the most flexibility globally, would those be sort of classic bunker, LNG, and something like hydrogen, or what would be the 3 that you'd weave together?
And that will vary. Some will, right now you would be looking at, mixing heavy fuel and LNG. So that's one option. Okay. You might have heavy fuel and methanol.
Okay.
And then you might be looking at what we call hybrid systems. So you bring electric into the equation because you have batteries that you use for peak shaving, so to say. So then you have two fuels and electricity. So those are the some, and you might have ammonia and heavy fuel, etc., etc. So there are a couple of different combinations, and it's also so. One of the challenges that we have is that we have quite a few different engine platforms, and we can't do all combinations from all our platform at once. We will do that and commercialize that based on the market demand, so to say. So, but it's also important to notice that of the green fuels, many of the green fuels today, they are not available in significant quantity. So, but it really becomes a discussion about, okay, 30 years, how do we hedge our bets? What are the main avenues for us, depending where we will be operating in the world, or what type of are we running cruise or container vessel, etc.
And it's so interesting as a company, you're doing business all over the world. Your customers are significantly in Asia, a lot in North America, a lot in Europe. So you see all these different customers with different approaches. Anything you would share about what you notice across regions in terms of customer tastes and concerns that our viewers would find interesting?
I think what everybody is, dealing with is, how do you make this transition, to something that is sustainable, but it's also financially viable? Because if you're going too fast, you will not be competitive. But if you're going too slow, you might become irrelevant because your vessels, they will not qualify in the grading system that currently exists. It's a bit technical, but so you need to go with the right speed for your segment. And I think this is the challenge. And many, I would say most owners, they are grappling with that. And they're developing for their fleets, they are developing their strategy of decarbonization strategy. What are the steps? Because you will not take all the steps at once. You will take steps as we go along to follow the regulations, so to say. And this regulation is already in place.
And the other one, if you don't mind, while we're in the shipping territory, is there's been a lot of talk, at least in the U.S., about bringing shipbuilding back. Yep. And your history, you're fascinating. You were the former president of Volvo Bus, but you also at ABB, you were a senior vice president of robotics. And there's often a discussion that robotics will be the reason why we're able to onshore a lot of industries. Anything you'd notice about or observe about shipbuilding and the desire to bring it back to the West? That's a fascinating topic.
Yeah, I think it has its challenges. Why it is very labor intensive, and so therefore the cost of labor becomes highly critical. And I would say yes, there is opportunities for robotization, also shipbuilding, but these are pretty big vessels. How they are put together, it's not very easy to robotize. So there is this element of it's a lot of man hours that will go into building a vessel. And that's the fact now, and it will probably be the same for the coming 10, 20, 30 years. So you need, if you want to set up the shipbuilding industry again, you need to really think through the labor component and how you make it, how you build vessels competitive. Well, of course, you can set up, you can make a strategic decision. We want to build X 200 or 300 vessels. And we want to make it in the US, and you pay the bill, and that can certainly be made. But even if you want to pay that bill, it will take time to set up the structure again, to rebuild the competences, etc. And it's going to take several years.
Do you think it's really important that we do it? I know that's an interesting, odd question, but it's a big strategic thrust, and it looks really hard.
No, I mean, there are people, in the administration that has much more insight in, the geopolitical dimensions of this than I have. I think, I guess in a world, with increasing geopolitical concerns, the whole concept for many nations about strategic sovereignty, when it comes to energy, shipbuilding, silicon, semiconductors, it's really in focus. And of course, you can build your strategic autonomy or strategic strengthening, but it will cost money. And then I guess you need to prioritize which are the areas that you consider being the most important to build that, strong strategic position. And then you need to, you make your list where you would like to be, and then you have a cost tag, and then you have to say, how much am I willing to pay, and how much, this specific, how strategic is it? I think this is, I'm clearly not a leadership of country, but I think this is what many leaders of countries will have to grapple with. We want to, in this the new kind of world sentiment, strategic sovereignty is certainly much higher on the agenda, and that will lead to that we will need to reprioritize, but to create that strategic sovereignty and build a position of strength. So, but which are the areas we're going to prioritize, and where do we get the most bang for the buck, so to say, because we will not have an infinite sum of money.
It's kind of, if you don't mind me saying, it's kind of what was missing from the decarbonization discussion for a while. It's like, look, we're trying to do all this, but we only have so much money. I mean, you just need to apply that rigor to all these objectives.
Yeah.
Mike's going to kill me because he's dying to talk about power. He's fresh from EEI, but one more, just while we're right in this national security discussion, and also the different standards that you face around the world. So you're the company's over 190 years old, right? And you're based in Finland. You're a manufacturer. You have a border with Russia. Like, what an interesting perspective. You have to pay the power costs associated with being in Europe. What does that, your location and your history, how do you think that affects the strategy of the company? Because it's a really, if you were headquartered in Little Rock, Arkansas, for instance, you would have some different perspectives. Like, just being a Finnish company, how does it affect your operating environment and how you think about the future of the company?
Yeah. So making a couple of points, we normally don't say that we are a Finnish company. We are an international company. We have 8,000 people in our big team, and they are in Papua New Guinea, and they're in Alaska, Little Rock as well, and everywhere in between. So we have people all over the world, and we really want to build a kind of international global culture where you can prosper regardless of nationality. But to your point, of course, we have a strong heritage from Finland, proud heritage from Finland, and of course, with the history of Finland and its relationship with Russia. This is something very concrete, and I think this is also why Finland has chosen to have a very strong defense. There's a lot of discussion about defense spending suddenly in Europe, and I think Finland has kept its continuity in defense spendings as percentage of GDP, and it has it has a very strong defense force, and also the society behind it. And that is clearly, a consequence of the relationship with Russia and the long border with Russia. Now, I think also, because of the strength, I think Finland and Russia will always have a relation, but I think it's a relationship of respect. So I think that's one thing. Then, of course, Finland is also part of the EU and a formidable player in the EU. And there, of course, we are part of the EU ecosystem, so to say. So I think that a lot of it, coming back for a nation in Northern Europe, how do you build a future? How do you develop? I tie it a little bit to Wärtsilä. You need a focus. You need a focus on innovation, trying to be a technology leader, also try to build companies with flat structures where you can, give responsibility to people, and, having people taking, really engaging in what companies are doing. And I think this is a little bit the culture that we're also trying to build in Wärtsilä.
Well, I mentioned it up front. We've heard quite a lot over the years about the technology focus of the company. Hope to continue to learn more and visit. We keep looking for that perfect time to come, but it's extremely impressive. Well, take us, Mal.
But however, if I may make one comment, so we are very proud. I talked about we are about enabling sustainable society through innovation and technology and services. But let's not forget services, because services is half of our business. So half is new build equipment, and half is services. And so we are very much engaged in supporting our customers. These are high assets with high value, vessels or power plants, and the uptime reliability is really key. And we are helping our customers to keep the vessel, keep the plants running, and supporting our customers with high uptime, high reliability, making them successful. And services, actually, this is the area where we are making some strategic bets in AI or digital toolbox to even further support our people in developing our service business.
Well, let's jump into the topic that's been hanging over all this, which is your energy business, which really means your power business and all the services and technology that goes with it. Do you mind just talking about how you, because the marine business seems so different from that business, like how you manage them, how they interact? Like, these are two pretty unique businesses. I'm sure our audience would love to understand that better.
Yeah. So you could say what holds these two industries together for us is, first, it's the engine technology, because we use our reciprocating engines, the piston engines. We use very similar technology. We use the same technology and almost the same engines for both applications. So there is a kind of synergy on the R&D side. Same with the fuels. Some of the fuels will probably come both in energy and marine. The other area where we have strong synergies is on the service side, because we have service people all over the world. And in some countries, the energy business is bigger than the marine business. In other countries, marine is bigger than energy. But we can really, group, our resources together and serve both industries with the same team. So there are strong, industrial synergies, core technology, the industrial system to produce the core technology, and the services. Then you're fully right. The industries themselves have very much different structures, it's different dynamics, different regulations.
So maybe, Mike, you got to jump in here, but I'll tee you up, which is North America, the U.S. right now. There's been a lot of excitement around power backup, power reliability. That's been with us for a while, but the AI discussion has turbocharged all that. Do you mind just talking for a minute about your North American business in particular and what you're seeing there? Mike, please jump in as Håkan tackles that one.
So in our energy business, we provide two types of solutions. One is you could say baseload power, which is power running 24/7. Often we provide power to kind of island nations like the Caribbean or Indonesia, or you could say installations in remote areas, mining, cement factories, steel factories, etc. Now we have a new kind of baseload application, and I'll come back to that, and that is data centers. And I think we all know there is a lot of excitement on data centers in the US. I mean, half of the world's data centers are currently in the US, and I think this is where the growth is the fastest. The other solution that we are providing is what we call balancing power, and that is, using our engines, because they are really good at ramping up and down frequently and doing it quickly. And that's ideal if you want to provide stability to the power system. And that stability can be needed, for instance, to balance renewables, or balance if you have weaknesses in the power system. So, and that's really also been a strong narrative for us in the US the last couple of years. I mean, Texas is one of the hottest markets. We all know 40% of the installed power base in Texas is renewables these days. It's on the theme of affordable power, and then you need the balancing to keep the system stable. So those are the two major areas, and you can say neither of these applications are new, and I think we've been with them, and our technology is not new either. It's been there for decades and decades. But so it's not that we are bringing new technology, it's that the markets, energy markets, both the balancing and the data center based, is moving now into our sweet spot. And that's why we will see, I foresee that we will see significant continued growth in our energy business. And how can I say that? Yeah, on the balancing side, we are stronger in providing that balancing power with our competitive technology, gas turbines, because we are quicker on ramping up and down, and we also have a modular concept which makes it more affordable how to build the balancing. On the data center side, what is happening, if you go a couple of years back, a data center would need 10, 20, 30 megawatts. They would hook up with the utility, so they would get the grid from the power, the power from the grid, and then they will buy some high-speed engines for backup if the grid didn't work. Now, what is happening the last couple of years, the data centers are clearly getting bigger, so they need hundreds of megawatts, gigawatts sometimes, and then when the data center developers approach the utility will normally say, yes, that's an interesting idea, but considering our process, come back in 8 years, we might be ready for you. And it doesn't work. And that's why we will see increasingly this type of off-grid power generation for data centers. And it's hundreds of megawatts and plus. And this is right in our sweet spot. And also here, our technology has some pretty interesting features. This modularity makes it easier to build redundancy. As you probably know, the data centers, they're talking about the 5 nines, maybe on the power of the 3 nines. And to provide that, you need redundancy. And it's more affordable to build a redundancy concept on engines compared to the gas turbines, because our engines are smaller. So then we have the other benefits. We don't derate, in hot weather. We don't derate on high altitude. And we require very little water. I mean, 1,000, it's mind-boggling, 1,000 times less water than the gas turbine guys. So I think we have some very interesting proposition going forward.
Yeah, I think my question would be we're now talking a lot about reciprocating engines. Nobody really was talking about them 6-9 months ago, just because the CCGTs were just going up so much in price, and now you're very competitive. So I'd really want, we're hearing that from Caterpillar, we're hearing it from others, we're hearing it from even fuel cell companies, and I really want to kind of talk about your supply chains. I mean, I think if you were going to go into a customer, what can you promise him from a supply chain, from an order standpoint, and maybe discuss what that looks for you, what the supply chain looks like, just because I don't think a lot of people understand the reciprocating engine type business.
Yeah. So basically, reciprocating engine. What type of engine is that? That's the engine that we have, most of us still in the car. Now, our engines are the size of a living room or a house, I would say. So they're really big, but they're built on the same principle. There's pistons rotating, and the crankshaft, etc. So you could say the base technology is the same. Now we have a different supply chain than our competing technologies, and of course we need to, as we ramp up and as we expand, we of course need to manage our supply chain, but it's a little bit different supply chain than competing technologies. Now, in terms of deliveries, when can we deliver? I get that question a lot. Right now I would say we still have slots available or capacity available for the second half of 2027. But of course, it's a very dynamic market, and we have a lot of, as I said, we have quite a few opportunities in our pipe in different stages of maturity.
It's really also interesting to me. It's like affordability was sort of the key buzzword, but now speed to market has almost overtaken that. So you might have a product that's a little bit more expensive, but if you can get it there sooner, then you win the order. Essentially, is that the state of the market right now? And
Yeah,
when does that change? Does that change when the basic supply chains flip the other way, or how do you?
yeah. No, I would say that, you're right in the sense that we used to be higher on the CapEx side than our gas turbine competitors, but I think that's not true anymore. And on top of that, if you look at the total life cycle cost of our equipment, it's very competitive. Uh, you know, so I think from a financial perspective, we have a strong position. From our technology perspective, and I talked about a no derating, a modular concept. That's a really strong concept. I think the key here is, we have a new candy. People need to try it and when they've tried it, they will like it. And they will come back for the same candy, so to say. But of course, if you haven't tried this candy, it's new. And I think this is a little bit why, and let's be frank, we are continuing the data centers to be the new kid on the block. But I think when people really get to know our technology, they really like it and they see the benefits. And then the third is right now, we have a bit of an advantage because we have shorter delivery times. But I'm also making a point because that might change. We know that, everybody's expanding capacity. So in 3-4 years, the lead times for gas turbines will probably go down again. The key thing here is that our technology has some of these intrinsic benefits. I think that's the most exciting thing.
And Håkan, you mentioned you're here in the States. I think you mentioned you're visiting one of our RTOs. When we look at it, almost doesn't matter what region of the country you're in. The generation queue is substantially solar batteries. Now, there's desire to increase the base load in that mix. Maybe just talk about what are the core solutions for those RTOs are talking to you guys about? Is it is it assuring reliability? Is it balance of plant? I'm just curious to hear what the Wärtsilä solution that is most in the focus with those type of organizations.
I think key thing is, for is for the RTO is stability of power. The power needs to be reliable. You really can't afford to have blackouts, load shedding, etc. I think that's the very top of the line. Secondly, is the load growth, and that is of course data center is one driver, but it's not. It's not the only driver, so to say. So I think those are the two key themes, and to your point, there's so much happening that speed is of essence, clearly.
Would you mind, Håkan? I'm sorry to be so literal, but I was thinking if I was going to buy I know you sell the engine and the service and the thinking that goes with it, but what is your best-selling engine, if you will, and if I was some sort of industrial user, how should I think about the cost of the power? And I'm assuming, if you don't mind, maybe a little more detail on the engine. Can I run it on diesel as well as natural gas, or maybe just? I feel like I'm on a car lot right now, and I'm asking you the details, but it's interesting. So if you wouldn't mind sharing some of that.
Yeah, no. So you have so our most selling engine is W50. So it's Wärtsilä 50. 50 is the centimeter. Sorry, not inches. 50 centimeters. That's the diameter of the cylinder, actually. So then it's a half a meter. It's pretty big.
Wow.
So on the energy side, it's mostly gas. So it's running on LNG, but we have variants which are dual fuel capable, so they can run on heavy fuel or diesel or biodiesel for that matter, and gas. So some customers, they really want that fuel flexibility because it gives them certainty if the gas for some reason would dry out, so to say, or they couldn't get access. Whereas some customers say, no, I want gas only.
And a Wärtsilä 50, how much power would that produce?
So around 20 megawatts for one engine.
And when you're doing the modular, and I know you just did a data center, not quite 300 megawatts, how many, what units would you use to pull together that type
So
of
let's
power?
say you have this Lego building blocks. Each one is 20
Yes.
megawatts, and you just add them. So you want 100 megawatts, you add 5 of them. And, if you want
Okay.
200, you add 10 of them. So the logic there is very simple. Now,
I
on the
didn't know if you had
yeah.
like a 50 megawatt engine or something like that, but 20 is your standard unit.
No, so for the 50s, then we have smaller engines, W31s. So
Okay.
and then you're talking 10 megawatts, 15 megawatts. So we have a Lego box,
Okay.
and as in any Lego box, I guess you played with Lego as well. You have some has 1 dot, and some has 2 and 3. So but I mean the most standard engine on the energy side is the W50, and they normally come in blocks of 20. So to say.
And you mentioned your supply chain, and you referenced all these international teams and team members. Where are you making most of your engines?
So, I mean, for the energy sector, we make them in Vaasa in Finland.
So what surprises you as you are dealing with customers and watching everything that's happening? I mean, it seems like every week there's a new deal, a new announcement, a new breakthrough, a new joint venture. I know I've seen you talk a lot about collaboration, public and private, as well as private to private. But what would you say about this current environment? Like, how are you keeping up? It's changing so fast. Have you ever seen a business environment like this?
I think I mean, if you talk about the energy situation in the US and the growth, that is, kind of. I spoke to some colleagues that also have some gray hair. I think it's a chance or opportunity or challenge of a generation, so to say. So what we see here in the US is exceptional. Of course, there is the questions: is this a hype? It's going to crash, where it's going to end. I think that when I talk to our customers, the data center builders, they say that they have obviously a positive view of the future, and I think the key thing is that you could say the corporate use of AI is just at the very, very beginning. That's relevant for Wärtsilä. We are an industrial engineering company, and we work with AI as a tool for continuous improvement. We talked about our strategic bets for services, and when we start to use those, and we are using them, but we will grow, of course, we will require more data and more data storage. So, and we will see this in all industries and banks, et cetera. We are just at the very beginning. So I think that's, that the demand for data centers will grow. I think that's why you could make a strong logic, I would argue, and that's why a lot of people are excited. Now, I often get the question, okay, so how many gigawatts by when? And this is extremely challenging. We made a summary of what others have said about it. So McKinsey's of the world, Goldman Sachs of the world, the Fuchs of the world, etc. And it's pretty interesting. I mean, if you just zoom in on the US and you talk about how many extra gigawatts will be added for data centers from now to 2030, and if you look at the estimates by these, reputable consultancies or institutions, it varies from 20 gigawatts to 100 gigawatts. So it's very hard to say how much it will be, but it will continue to grow.
So I mentioned your background in robotics. I'm curious, almost every industrial company we talk to seems to have a concern about people and where they're going to get the skilled people they need to do all the things that they want to do. Do you experience that same thing? And how do you think about robotics or physical AI as a way to address some of those concerns?
So, on the positive side, when we are recruiting for positions, we actually get quite a few applicants for many of our positions because we are perceived as a technology leader, and we are perceived also to having this chance to make a real difference in our two industries, and that attracts a lot of attention from people in Europe, but also in the US and in Asia. So from that perspective, we're on a favorable position. But to your point, finding good co-workers, it requires effort. It's not, it doesn't come for free, and you really need to work with it. And I think clearly that automation, including robotization, is one way to deal with shortage of labor. But it's not the only solution. Clearly, half of the world's robots are in China. So also there, people are acknowledging we can automate and robotize and increase productivity. So it will help. On the AI, clearly, it will also help. I think we will be able to do, some mundane jobs, some boring jobs, some very repetitive jobs. We will be able to automate them. But I do think also that there's going to be jobs in the future where people work together with AI, or people work together with robots. I don't see a Terminator Skynet future.
Håkan, what's really interesting to me is that everyone is really focused on just the generating product, and they don't really talk too much about the services end. And I know we listened to CAT Investor Day last week, and they really talked about service being a real key component. And it's, in the sense I get from you, is that is a big key for you guys. I mean, the services end of the business as well. When you talk to these AI companies, the data center companies, what kind of contracts are you talking, and what does the service component look like? Is there a year? How does that work out? Maybe some little background of that.
Yeah. So if I first talk, services, as I said, half of Wärtsilä's business, and it's really right in the middle of our purpose, innovation and technology and services. So very, very important for us. And my view, we have a simple strategy in Wärtsilä, and we call it moving up the service value ladder. And the value ladder has 4 steps. You start with the spare parts, which is transactional business. Then you move into service agreements, and you have a fairly broad array of different agreements that we tailor to our customers. Third step is the retrofit, so upgrading old equipment to new fuel standards or making them more fuel efficient. And then we have the 4th step, which are the more, we call them performance-based agreements, and these are long-term agreements, 5-10 years. And this is actually where we leverage our digital toolbox, and we make commitments on uptime reliability, and we share the ups and downsides with our customers. So this is advanced contracts. And the whole notion is that we want to, help and work with our customer to move up the ladder. And as we do, there is significant opportunity to have happier customer, but also to grow our top line and our bottom line. So that is our strategy. Then, how do you build a good service business? I see it like a tripod, this chair with 3 legs. And one leg is only that you have a good product. The second leg is that you have great people. It's so important you get the right skills, you develop, train people professionally, move them around in the world, etc. And the third leg on the chair is a great culture. Having a culture where you really support and collaboration, that you can have people working together, solving customer problems, and don't getting stuck in silos. And then I normally say that okay, competition can kind of replicate or copy maybe some of your products. They haven't learned to clone people yet. I don't know how it is in Silicon Valley, but I don't think they got that yet. And we all know how difficult it is to build a good culture. It takes time. It takes years and years. So if we can get those 3 things together in a good way, great products, great people, and great culture, we have something that is very strong. And this is what we've been working with in Wärtsilä. So moving up the service value ladder, and then working on the tripod, so to say. So on the data center side, in general, I think many of the data center developers, they want us to do full operation and maintenance. So that's one type of service agreement. We do that already today, and for many of the customers. But there are also clearly some customers that say that we want to operate by ourselves, and then we would provide, different type. We can provide spare parts, we can provide annual service. So there is a vast array. But what I generally say that the data center power, this is base load 24/7. It's running. So there is a very attractive service business related to this industry as well, and of course focus on high uptime, high reliability. So it feeds into that as well.
Oh, that's great color. I wanted to circle back to a question I had on the marine business, where one of the bullet points in your investor deck just caught my eye, where it talked about in the EU for marine fuel, it says the regulatory landscape will double fuel costs by 2030.
Yep. Right.
So I'm curious, just the behavior and everyone can see the regulatory dynamics coming. How is that influencing customer behavior, choices, the relative competitiveness? I'm just curious that your perspective on all that.
Yeah. So you're right. I mean, this EU introduced the marine industry to the ETS, to the EU's carbon trading system, huh? And there is also this EU Fuel Marine, which puts year by year additional levies on the fossil fuel. So for many applications, because you need to make a couple of assumptions, etc. You're fully right, and it's pretty game changing. You will double the fuel cost, and one should notice that if you operate, you for instance, you're shipping from China to Europe, and going back from Europe to China, you will pay those fees already today. People are paying for one leg. So as long as you go into European, you will pay. No? So it's real, and it's happening. And how does that affect behaviors? Coming back to what I said initially, ship owners, when they think about new vessels, they think 30 years ahead. They know regulations will probably tighten, certainly going to be regulations. They need to deal with it. They need fuel flexibility, fuel efficiency, also looking at carbon capture. We haven't talked about that today, but that's another tool in the toolbox. So there is, I would say, many of they are developing their decarb strategies for their whole fleets. And that's a strategy that runs over decades. It's not something they will fix in a year or two. They will move with regulations, staying relevant in the right clause in this regulatory framework. And this is happening as we speak. Then retrofits. Globally, we have about 100,000 big vessels out there in the world. And we cannot scrap them. I mean, too much value in those. And so it's not only about new vessels. We have the existing fleet, and how do you step by step, comply with the regulations that are already in place. And it normally means first you slow steam. So you go slower because you burn less fuel. Then you work with energy savings. And in the existing fleet, there's quite a few energy savings opportunities, both how you operate the vessel, how you handle the cargo. And then you start to look at hybrid solutions. So you complement with batteries in a hybrid operation, and then you actually start to upgrade for new fuels. And just another example of what we are doing on some of the really big vessels, when they start to slow steam, their original engines, two-stroke engines, they're too big. So we have a service that we call drastic derating, and it's actually shrinking the engine. So you're basically shrinking the cylinder of the engine, and therefore, of course, you get less power. But if you're going to go slower, you don't need that power. And if you have a smaller engine, you consume less fuels.
Interesting.
Well, Håkan, you've been so generous with your time. We so appreciate getting to know your team and having you join. I just had maybe one last thing we didn't talk about, which is Mike referenced up front, your stock is up a lot this year. You're an international public company. What do you hear? Maybe just talk to us about your investors, the research community, the people who have been buying and owning your stock. Like I just feel like all of us would be curious to get your impression of them. Who are they? Where are they? What drives them to own the stock besides some of the obvious things that you've talked about today?
So we have actually a fairly broad investor base. I mean, of course, we have an anchor investor in Investor AB, and they own about 18% of our shares. And then you have some, bigger pension funds, both Finnish and the known Americans, Vanguard, BlackRock, etc. But if you look beyond the top 10, it's a fairly diversified ownership base, and we have our owners both in Finland, in Europe, and in the US. And I think we are picking up in US. We are picking up more and more interest. And what is the feedback that we get from investors? We launched a strategy in end of 2021, and we really talked about the decarb journey of our two industries. We want to be a technology leader. We want to move up the service value ladder. Green is not black or white. This is a transition. It's going to take decades. It needs to environmentally sustainable, but it needs to be financially viable. And when we launched that initially, and we also in those days we were like 5-6% EBIT, and we launched that. We said we wanted to have 12% EBIT, and the first couple of years, I would say that to convince the investors about our decarb journey, and quite frankly, we were not jumping on a bandwagon. This was long term, and it's really serious in the sense that the financial viability for our customers is really, really key. I think as we went along, and the whole also we had been talking about balancing power for quite some time for the energy sector, but it hadn't happened yet. But as it started to happen, and that we could show that we were moving up the service value ladder, we have excelled in fuel flexibility, etc. People or investors that was trying, we believe in your strategy, but okay, please show us the money. And we've been ramping up our profitability, and now we have revised our financial targets, and we are well 12-13%. Our new target's 14%, and now I think investors are also seeing we have been clear in our communication. We have a solid path to reach our financial targets. So it's been a journey to build the credibility with our investors by providing the proof points that we're actually doing what we said we're going to do. And I think we have now a strong track record of executing basically, and according to the strategy that we have set. Then on stock price, that's something I have learned as a CEO for a listed company. I don't comment on stock price. I focus on customers. I focus on our people and results, and then the stock market will do its magic.
Well, a CEO of a major global company joining us from a hotel room in Little Rock, Arkansas, that is someone focused on customers, clearly. So, well, thank you so much for joining us. Please come see us in Houston. We really appreciate it. And we really keep saying it, but we're going to come to Vasa. We want to see it.
Yeah, please do. You should. We have, and the team has probably been telling you, but we have 1,000 customers visiting us every month. 1,000.
Wow.
And I'm impressed. And we have that since we inaugurated our Sustainable Technology Hub, STH, in 2022. And it continues. And why is it? I ask customers, why. Of course, I'm very happy that they choose to come and visit us. But I ask them, okay, once you visited, what did you see? How did you like? And normally customers are impressed because they feel that they understand us. You have the labs there, you have all the engineers, the manufacturing. You meet the people, you feel the energy. You can really feel the innovation in the walls. These are customers telling me this, and so people are excited, and they are spreading the grapevine, I guess, because we are very happy. We have a lot of customers coming and visiting. So you should come. You're mostly invited.
Fantastic. Well, we're coming. So
All
thank
right.
you so much. Thank you to your team, and thanks to all of you for watching and listening.
Okay.